Hello and welcome to the Hive Stadium here in Edinburgh. The Under-20 Six Nations is just around the corner, and it is here in the shadows of Scottish Gas Murrayfield that our national Under-20 team will stage their home fixtures in the coming weeks against France and England. Over the next few while, we're going to take a closer look at the challenges, the opportunities, and set the scene for a massive campaign for Scotland Under-20s, as well as examine some of those who could make a big impact in navy blue. Well, I'm joined in the Hive Stadium by a couple of Wheel Kent faces on the Scottish rugby scene, our Super Series commentator and Borders rugby guru Dale Clancy, and of course former Scotland captain and international centurion Chris Paterson. Chris, you're involved in elite rugby wearing many hats, from law changes to coaching to TV punditry to shoots like this one. What do you make of the standard of the Under-20s game as a whole right now?
As a whole, generally very high. I think there's more and more international Under-20s players playing top level rugby, certainly across Europe, in England and France, URC as well. So it almost replicates professional rugby in a lot of ways, because you've got individual players who have been playing professional rugby, also the structures and kind of gameplay in the game plans are trying to replicate the position. Now I think it's a reasonably good thing, but I'm not 100% sold on it. I quite like age grade rugby, because Under-20 still is age grade rugby, to have that fluidity, to have that ability to target space when you see it, learning on the job a little bit. So I think it's difficult for the Under-20s players, because they are being coached almost as professionals, but not all of them are professionals, so they have to fit into the system where they have to be super attuned to all the different strategies and structures, but still maintain that raw enthusiasm for the game that some of them still play at club level. So across the board, really high standard. I think the time that our Under-20s have spent together this year and towards the end of last season will really help them prepare, but it's a big ask, it's a big challenge. The results haven't been as good as you would like over the last 18 months or so, but there's still excellent individual players within the squad that have progressed through the professional ranks. Yeah.
Where do you think Scotland sit in the natural order of Under-20s right now? There's a balance to be struck, of course, between the need to win games and develop as a group, and the need to develop individual players and grow as a team, rather than just focusing on results.
Yeah, I think we're still producing good individual players. I think you'd like to produce more, but we've still got quality players. Even the last 2 or 3 weeks coming into the URC with Max Williamsons and Alex Samuels, Rory Darge, apparently co-captains. Only 2 or 3 years ago he was in the Under-20 system. Now, these players didn't win a huge amount of games as Under-20s players, but they learned a lot, they improved as players, and they're tiptoeing in. When I played, it was Under-21 level a long time ago, and then World Rugby changed to become Under-20s. I think we struggled a little bit in that transition. I say going back more than 20 odd years now, but we played Under-18s, Under-19s, then Under-21s, and I always felt that we would develop physically a little bit later than other nations, so that extra year Under-21s, I think we were stronger, and but by that age of 21 or 20 or 19. But I think the French team will be particularly strong, as always. Ireland have shown the last couple of years that they're particularly strong, so our lads have got their work cut out.
Yeah, for sure. Dale, you spend a lot of your time racking up the miles and travelling around to club grounds and of course the Forsrock Super Series and Super Series Sprint over the past couple of seasons. That is in many ways the proving ground for young players in their late teens towards that 20 age grade mark to try and compete against grown men. What have you made of the talent that's coming off that pathway and competing in that competition?
Well, there's been an obvious step up. Obviously I think you're alluding to it there in terms of where do we sit in terms of the national landscape of where our Under-20s sit. I think we're not as high as we'd like to be, and we'd have been naive to sit down and think that it was just going to happen overnight, that we're going to get a whole cluster of talented young players coming through. So, the Super Series is plugged that gap in terms of giving these young individuals a step up. You think even the Forsrock Futures team has given a chance for all those young players to learn, make mistakes. It's the Under-20s is still quite raw in terms of these. There's a lot of innovation with these players, and there's a lot of lessons to learn along the way. And especially some players that we'll obviously chat about later on, but some of them have been immersed in some of these Super Series teams for a few years now, and they've been learning off some really talented individuals. And it's not going to happen overnight, but certainly the Super Series the gap that was there from the club game to the professional ranks where these players want to play. It's been a great asset for Scottish rugby.
Well, we've taken shelter from the wild elements out there on the high pitch. We are taking refuge inside the famous home dressing room here at Scottish Gas Murrayfield, and we're going to use this opportunity to have a closer look at some of the men who could have key impacts on the forthcoming Under-20s Six Nations Championship. We're going to start with a really impressive, really powerful midfield man in a young Kerr Yuill. Perhaps unsurprising, Chris, that he has the size, the precociously physically developed player that he is, given his dad Stuart's an S&C guru and a former weightlifter who you'll know well.
Yeah, he is a fit, strong lad. Played last year, 7 under-20 caps already. Really powerful ball carrier, but he's a type of player in the midfield that you can build systems and game plans around. Really strong with ball in hand. You can see here fighting through the English defence. This was his first test. It was the first game last year, and he just took it to like a duck to water. He has super serious experience with Ayrshire Bulls as well, but what I mean by building a game plan around is the fact that he has that attacking edge with ball in hand, how strong is his fend, but his distribution is excellent as well. So the threat that he poses to defence with ball in hand can open up space for himself, obviously, but for others around about him as well. I always think it's really quite different your second year in under-20s rather than your first year. That's what he produced in his first year. Really excited with the experience he has through Super Series as well to see what he brings this year.
We don't necessarily produce many physical specimens at this age at under-20s level, particularly in the back line.
Look at you.
I was going to say,
well,
he's pointing to you there.
Pointing no fingers
You
at
should have
all.
seen me at under-21 level.
I think your caps speak for themselves, Mossy, on that front, regardless of your physical prowess, now or then. But all joking aside, Kerr Yuill 6'2", well over 100 kgs. At that age, he's such a prospect in that back line.
He is. But you have to be the all-round player. You have to develop, and you can see that offloading game, you can see that fend game. Rugby's still an evasive game because whether it's at under-20s or whether it's in professional ranks or in national colours at full international level, there'll always be somebody bigger. There'll always be somebody as big or more powerful. So you have to develop that rounded game, and he does that really well. I know he works hard with the staff through at Glasgow on his evasion, on his support play. But that's what I mean, the threat of his ball carry and his physical presence is a threat, but it can also be an excellent decoy to create space elsewhere.
Yeah, okay, great stuff. Let's move on. Scotland always seem to do a fine line in rugby playing hookers, and when you think back to the likes of Gregor Hiddleston, Angus Fraser making their professional debuts recently, Patrick Harrison with Edinburgh, even Ewan Ashman, who set the under-20 scene ablaze a few years ago out in South America, Jerry Blythe-Lafferty-Dale could be the next one off that production line.
Yeah, and I think they're all quite similar in the way that they play their rugby as well. They're really confrontational as hookers. They're very direct, and you can see again another player who doesn't want to die with the ball in hand. You can see here obviously being able to shift the point of contact, use a bit of footwork. Very very much like Ashman. Ashman's a similar type of player, and Jerry Blythe-Lafferty had a good Fosrock Super Series championship as well, and putting in some good performances. And you see here, he's just that type of hybrid hooker that you see nowadays. They're able to offer themselves up round the pitch. He's got a good engine. He gets round the corner, and he's certainly not going back and coming forward in terms of having ball in hand. So it's important as well, especially in any game of rugby, that your front row players are involved out with the scrum. You've got to set up that platform, but they've got to offer things in the loose as well. And Blythe-Lafferty is one of those players that does offer that.
So from the front row to the back three, and a little bit of Fijian-inspired flair from our next player, Amina Thanguzal. Fijian heritage, born in England but schooled here in Dunblane at Queen Victoria, which is where he took up the game of rugby and where he has been pulling up trees as a flying winger. Mossy, in one of your multiple old positions, what do you like about the way Amina goes to work? He's an X-factor talent, isn't he?
He is, absolutely. I mean, he's really quick, but it's just his want to counter-attack. I think counter-attack is as much about decision making as it is about the ability to then find the space, but you have to have that ability that you want to attack, you want to get in behind, and then you have the ability to finish it off. Picked up one under-20 cap last year, probably wanted more, but he's been a real standout in Super Series for through the sprint and through the championship. Some of his individual efforts here in a team that struggled just underlined his qualities.
2 tries against Ayrshire Bulls, you know, and I think as well he holds his width really well, which stretches defences, which, you know, Ayrshire Bulls were a team that defend really narrow, they're accurate in defence, and I was at that game and you could see the risk that he poses, and you know, you'll see here as well, there's a counter-attack, the futures get through and he starts to move towards the wing, he knows where the space is, and he's a finisher, and for me, he's one of those players that you would pay money to go and see. You know, you think about players that have come through the last few years in terms of wingers, Darcy Graham, and just to name one, he is exact same ilk in terms of you want to go and watch him because he's box office.
Okay, we're going to finish off with a couple of the real powerhouses of this Scotland under-20 squad back row. We'll start with the first of these two, Tom Curry, younger brother of Edinburgh Centre and Scotland senior team hopeful Matt. He is a big old unit, isn't he, Dale? And there's a lot to like about his game. Very confrontational, very aggressive, and getting his first taste at rugby at under-20 age grade level. Yeah, you know, he's a player that's been well nurtured through you know, the school system, and it's exactly what you say there in terms of that he's a really attritional and hungry forward. He likes the physical confrontation, and you know, you'll see in the clips here there's almost not a lot of highlight show reels because of the dogged work that he does. You know, he likes to make his tackles, he likes to be accurate at the breakdown. The games that I was fortunate enough to be able to cover with him involved was he was really making a nuisance of himself, which slows play down for, you know, we've alluded to the fact that where we are in terms of our national team, we're going to need at times to be able to slow the game down, and Tom Curry does exactly that. He's physical over the ball, he's a big specimen for a young individual as well, so yeah, he's going to be pivotal in that back row. To Liam McConnell, who has captained Scotland under-20 over the past couple of seasons, a real excitement around this lad. He was playing men's rugby at Super Series and sprint level at just 17 years of age. He was training with Scotland under-20s at 18. Unbelievably, this is his 3rd season involved with the under-20 setup. And there are some wonderful stories about the way that he likes to go to work, Chris. He was in training with the Edinburgh senior boys not so long ago, and at 18 years old, and he ruffled some feathers.
Yeah, he's a hard edge, a real hard edge. Listen, you don't need stories to back that up. You just look at his performances when he's asked to play. 14 under-20 caps already, captained last year as well. And he's just, I don't want to say he's a throwback, but he's a old-fashioned forward in terms of his values, his hardness, his desire to do the basics really, really well, to do the hard work first. You know, yes, he'll practice his offload, his softer skills, but he's setting by example, he's leading by example, not necessarily by what he says. He's a really, really hard competitive opponent. And another thing is, you see his reaction in whether it's post-match interviews or whether it's his behaviour after defeat. That tells you what type of player he is as well. And I think that's really important at a young age to see that from players, but for teammates to see him kind of displays those characteristics as well, because professional rugby, international rugby can look quite flashy to the outside eye, but it's not. The guys that make the top of the hardest workers, they probably give the ultimate sacrifice more than anybody else, and he's an example of that. He shows how hard it is to succeed there, and his under-20 comrades will see that.
We've picked out some of those individual players, but just quickly a word from you both on the collective. What are the goals? What do you want to see from Scotland in this championship?
Well, tradition of the last 2 or 3 years, the rate of improvement of the team has been quite dramatic. From you know, maybe not last year, I thought one of the best performances was away against England at Stoop. But over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, you tend to get better as the tournament goes on, whether that's confidence, whether that's getting used to the environment, whether that's getting used to or understanding how hard it is at times to perform. So I'd like to see Scotland under-20s start quicker, start better, rather than almost improve at such a rate at a tournament. Of course you improve with more time together, more coaching under your belt, but I think with their exposure to the Super Series as individuals, I'd like to see it sounds terrible, but the rate of improvement over the next few weeks slower, because the starting point's been better.
I would say consistency and a bit of improvement and progress. I think that's what, you know, as a rugby fan, that's what you want to see. Underneath the results is a performance. It's a wider picture as well, and under-20s is sometimes just a really brief snapshot in time. I think the immersion of Super Series rugby will start to show this campaign, but that doesn't mean that we're going to go on and be favourites to win it. But to be competitive, put up a fight in your home games and try and steal something away, I think that's probably where we want to be, and and make sure we show those little signs of progress, and everybody underneath those results have a little look at the performances and back the team.
Okay, great stuff. Dale, Chris, thank you very much for your time, your insight and your analysis today. Lots of players to be excited about, lots of reasons to head to scottishrugby.org and snap up those few remaining tickets for the under-20 fixtures. First up against France, Friday the 9th of February, and then a fortnight later against England. Remember, those games taking place on the eve of the Men's Six Nations matches themselves, so a great chance for supporters to make a real international feast of their Six Nations weekend and back the boys in blue at under-20 and senior level over the next few weeks. Tickets start from just £16.50 for adults, £11.50 for students and £6.50 for under-18s. Head to scottishrugby.org, get your tickets, and we'll see you back here at the Hive very soon indeed. Bye for now.